I decided to stay at the Gravelly Cliff boathouse for another day to stock up on fish for the cats. I was struggling to get a proper read of the two of them. Unlike Two-Bone, their affection needed earning, although Seville was much quicker with her affection than Enin was. Blissfully fishing in the safety of my cove was so enjoyable, I carved out a porthole into the cabin so I could fish through the night. As I cracked through the rock to the open air, Two-Bone leapt straight out into the water, as if on a mission. I didn't know how far Two-Bone had to travel whilst he was lost, but I had assumed that a bit of rest at the cove would have been a welcome break for him. Clearly he was rested, or perhaps he was just a restless beast. It didn't bother me that he was playing as I intermittently fished and constructed, but the cats seemed to judge him. It felt like I'd snagged a very big fish, but instead heaved out an old saddle. It was caked in algae and tiny barnacles, but the leather was somehow still supple despite its apparent antiquity. Seville seemed interested in it too, and even followed Two-Bone into the cove to further investigate. It was nice not to be the only one around whose curiosity might be getting the better of them. As I lazily fished, one catch hit the rocky ledge of my porthole and fell into the cove. So I took the boat out into the night to retrieve it. Not wanting to be left alone, Enin finally dragged himself out of his comfort zone and hopped into the cool water to help me find the fish and quickly get back inside. When the boathouse was near completed, it was my turn to get into the water, to collect the scattered leftovers of building materials that were slowly sinking. I then empathised with Enin's tentativeness, as I felt very exposed sluggishly navigating underwater. I didn't realise how deep it was. I could barely see the bottom. I thought it must have been one of the animals that made me lurch as I was attempting to finish off the outside structure, but as I looked around, realised that Seville was retreating inside, and Enin had chosen to endure Two-Bone's wet, agitated breathing in the safety of the boat rather than remain in the water. All of a sudden, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to grab my ankles. After discovering that I couldn't attach the merchant's leads to tether the boat, I frantically tried to make space for myself in it. My selfish panic diminished my precision, and I continued swinging my arms violently, even after the animals were forced out, accidentally whipping Enin on the bottom with the lead as I did. The shock of my mistake pulled me out of my panic, and I treaded water to give him some fish. But that certainly wasn't enough for him to forgive me. The waters around the cove were swarming with fish, and I was easily able to accrue a handful of them. Once again I fished until after sundown and continued making myself comfortable at the porthole. To my fortune, aside from the saddle, I also fished up an enchanted rod that I daren't use as it was close to snapping in two, and a magical book. I'd once again forgotten to raise my arms above the ledge, and the latter fell into the cove. I remembered the fear of being snatched by a watery horror, and panic returned as I struggled to push myself back into my cabin. Something was bearing on me from the depths. My gang of four-legged friends blocked the drowned from trying to take back what I'd stolen from them, even Enin, who was ignoring his grievances against me. After rushing to the dock, I found that the drowned weren't interested in any of the animals, and I breathed a sigh of relief that we were all safe. The book matched the condition of the saddle, and didn't mean much to me. It was written in an old dialect that was difficult to read. Perhaps Gloria and old Carlton could make sense of it. I made a point of exclaiming my preference for my current magical book, but Nellie was still feeling sour that I'd previously referred to us as a gang of only 4. Our gang of 5? strolled across Horsepaw Prominence to the grumpy village, where the oldest of the triplet brothers greeted me. Branus was a proud and strong man who I thought would appreciate me seeking his guidance, so I asked if he knew how I could repair the battered fishing rod. After carefully inspecting it, barnacles and all, he gruffly declared that he did know how to fix it, but he would need a little time to revisit some old notes on repairing such an ancient item. So, in the meantime, would I mind collecting some wood for his village? As he had asked me to, I stored the enchanted rod in case he needed it for reference, along with the other things I'd fished up from the cove, and my emeralds that I needed to drop off to make pocket space. With the axe he had crafted, I began chopping. As the residents of the grumpy village would expect of me, I worked into the night. In these lands, all of the ravines and cracks in the ground seemed to emanate from Welcome Peak, and in such close proximity, I had to tread carefully to avoid falling into one of the many chasms beneath. The other usual dangers were still around, but, as I had learned, the monsters that attacked sometimes held valuable treasures, and tonight I was gifted yet another bounty when a zombie dropped a potato. I wasn't able to secure any gunpowder from one creeper as they ran away from me after I sliced him with a jump attack. Unable to deny himself recognition, Enin told me with a piercing look that it was actually him who had scared away the monster. A fact I doubted until the returning creeper was once again chased away without needing a bop from me. With Two-Bone also herding skeletons away, I was provided ample time to forest safely. As soon as he saw me, Branus asked where exactly I had found all these things. When I told him about my cabin at the gravelly cliff, he became despondent and explained to me that those waters were haunted. It was the site of an ancient tragedy where many soldiers of the old king's army drowned as they tried to swim to land. They were all that was left of the old king's army after a hellish battle. That same battle was a subject of great shame for his own ancestors. Judging by the age of the saddle, the rod, and the book, it was possible that they belonged to those drowned men. So how did I get my hands on all this? I gestured my fishing rod at the cats to explain. Well, anyway, Branus said he could attempt to repair it, but he would need a lot of iron. Luckily, I knew exactly where I could find some. As I mined out iron on the surface of Horsepaw Prominence, I reflected on what else Branus had told me. He reckoned wolves and cats could sniff out ghosts, and asked if the animals had displayed any peculiar behaviour at the cove. If he was right, that was two things I had learnt about my animals today, as I was now sure that Two-Bone and the cats was somehow zooming to my side, just as an Enderman might, and when they did, Nellie softly glowed. Previously, I had only seen it out the corner of my eye, and just told myself I was probably tired. The weaponsmith greeted me with an accepting nod at my pile of iron. I fitted his smithy with a furnace and the crafting table I'd needed to make it. Whilst waiting for the iron to smelt, we spoke in the cool air by the falls of the grumpy village, and the flowing water cast me back to the time when Branus had been adamantly standoffish after my poor first impression. I was still trying to find a way I might trade for their diamonds, but was too cowardly to bring it up to the imposing smith. Especially at the moment, because he was lamenting on their family's own lost relics. Something about a sword, but he had been talking for some time now, and I was struggling to pay attention. In the dimming light of dusk, he invited me back to continue our conversation in his hut. Branus asked me if I had noticed how sparse the village was. Well, that was because Fergus was travelling northeast past Old Carlton, and their younger brother was travelling southwest into the never-ending forest to find worthy people with enough bravery and skill to join their clan. When numbers dwindle to as low as theirs, he said, every mouth has a large voice, and it was Fergus's voice that had convinced everyone except Branus that recruiting more hands was a necessity. Making my excuses to go and check on the furnace, I politely smiled as I turned to escape his ramblings. But Abranus stopped me to say one more thing. Wherever I had learned how to fix a golem, I hadn't learned properly. Two-Bone yapped in response. Or was he trying to tell me something? The iron wasn't done yet, but the warm night was a welcome respite to Abranus' constant talking. He only seemed to listen to what he wanted to hear. For a moment, I inhaled the tranquility, but the silence I was enjoying was broken by a ghastly shriek. Fall's 500 follower festival was won this week by Plexiphon, or Quinn, so a big congratulations and thank you to everyone that took part. I reached out and we've picked which character will be named, so next time they appear we'll put that into effect. Whilst recording today, my webcam carried on stuttering and I didn't know how to fix it, so I'm crossing my fingers that it will just fix itself, but for the meantime, sorry about that. Also, Zombie knocked my plant over earlier, so that's why there's a big wet patch on the floor. Anyway, thank you so much for watching and I hope you enjoyed.